The moment he stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage, something shifted in the air, something subtle yet unmistakable, like a sudden spark of electricity running through the entire theater. He wasn't wearing anything flashy, just a neat jacket, polished shoes, and a quiet confidence that didn't need to announce itself. But the way he walked, slow and steady with a soft sway in his shoulders, made the entire audience straighten up in curiosity. Even before he spoke, something about him whispered different. Something about him whispered Elvis. He reached the center of the stage and paused, taking in the thousands of faces staring back at him. The lights above washed the stage in a clean golden hue, and for a moment he looked like he belonged there, like he had been waiting for this exact moment his entire life. His hands were slightly trembling, but his eyes were focused, sharp, almost glowing with excitement and fear blending into one powerful emotion. Simon leaned forward immediately, sensing something unusual. Sophia whispered something to Heidi, both of them smiling as if they were already rooting for him. Howie gave him an encouraging nod, but the contestant, this quiet Filipino young man, simply took a deep breath, swallowed, and smiled a shy, polite smile that melted half the room instantly. It wasn't the signature Elvis grin. It was warm, humble, the kind that made you want to believe in him before he even opened his mouth. He introduced himself, his voice soft and respectful, carrying a gentle accent that only made him more endearing. The crowd listened closely. His tone was calm, steady, but there was a hint of excitement beneath, like he was trying hard to keep his emotions contained. When he mentioned the name of the song he was going to perform, a classic Elvis masterpiece, the entire room reacted at once. A wave of whispers rolled across the seats. People nudged each other. A few fans whistled. Someone in the upper balcony shouted, "Let's go, Elvis!" and laughter rippled through the audience. The judges all smiled, intrigued. Even Simon, who had heard thousands of Elvis covers, tilted his head with a flicker of genuine interest. Something about this contestant didn't give off the vibe of someone trying to impersonate Elvis. There was no over-the-top costume, no exaggerated swagger, no dramatic pose. Instead, there was a quiet intensity in his eyes and a certain elegance in his posture that hinted at something deeper, something authentic. A stagehand handed him a handheld microphone. He accepted it gently, almost reverently, like it was something sacred. He adjusted his stance, a small movement, just a slight shift of the foot and a roll of the shoulders, but it completely transformed him. The room went silent. It wasn't obvious, but the people watching felt it. The energy had changed. The shy young man suddenly carried a kind of poised stillness, as if slipping into a role that was both familiar and profoundly personal. He looked up, scanning the audience for a second, then glanced at the judges. His smile softened, turning into something almost nostalgic. It wasn't rehearsed. It felt like a moment of pure connection, a silent thank you for letting him stand there. Someone in the crowd gasped softly, noticing the uncanny resemblance in that tiny gesture. Just the slightest lift of the corner of his mouth, reminiscent of the king himself. But what struck everyone most wasn't his appearance. It was the feeling, this sense that he wasn't trying to be Elvis. He carried the spirit of Elvis the way a storyteller carries a legend, with respect, love, and a deep understanding of what it means to bring something iconic back to life without copying it. The band behind him prepared, the musicians sitting up straight, hearing the cue from production. The lights dimmed slightly, isolating him in a warm spotlight. The stage looked bigger now, the shadows stretching long behind him. The cameras zoomed in, the energy shifted again. He was no longer just standing on the AGT stage. He was stepping into history, into a moment that thousands watching live and millions watching from home would remember. Before the music even began, the crowd felt it, anticipation mixed with disbelief. A woman in the front row clasped her hands together. A group of teenagers leaned forward, phones ready to record. Even the judges sat in perfect attention. The contestant closed his eyes for one brief second, a silent prayer, a grounding breath, a reminder to himself of why he was here. When he opened them again, the shy young man was still there, but now something else flickered behind his gaze. A spark, a fire, a hint of the legend he was about to summon with nothing but his voice. The room held its breath. He tightened his grip on the mic, and in that suspended moment, before the first note even touched the air, the entire world felt the same chilling truth. Something unforgettable was about to happen. The music slid in softly, just a faint hum from the band, but it was enough to pull the entire room into silence. The golden spotlight stayed locked on him, outlining his silhouette like a moment frozen in time. He lifted the microphone slowly, almost ceremonially, and for a heartbeat, everything stopped. No cheering, no murmuring, not even the rustle of clothing from the massive crowd. It was as if everyone collectively held their breath, waiting for the unknown that was about to burst into the world. And then it happened. The first note came out so deep, so velvety, so perfectly controlled that the audience gasped in unison. It wasn't an imitation. It wasn't someone trying to sound like Elvis. It was a voice carved from the same soulfulness, the same warmth, the same magnetic charm, but mixed with something fresh, something youthful, something distinctly Filipino. Sophia's jaw dropped instantly. Heidi shot straight up in her seat, her hands flying to her mouth. Howie blinked twice, staring like he'd just been hit by a musical lightning bolt. And Simon sat up sharply, eyebrows raised so high they practically touched his hairline. It was the expression he wore only when he heard something truly rare, something he didn't expect, something that didn't just surprise him. It stunned him. The contestant continued, his voice pouring effortlessly over the melody, rich and smooth like molten honey. His tone had this uncanny blend of classic Elvis resonance and modern clarity, a sound that didn't just fill the room, it pet around each person like a warm embrace. People started whispering things like, "No way, is that real?" And "Oh my God," but those whispers soon dissolved as the crowd grew completely entranced. The young man wasn't just singing, he was transforming. His shy demeanor slowly peeled away with each lyric, the subtle sway of his shoulders deepened, settling into a rhythmic flow that mirrored Elvis's iconic movements, but in a way that felt completely natural to him. His foot tapped lightly, then confidently, his stance widened, his free hand lifted and curled gently, as if guided by instinct rather than imitation. It was effortless, organic, like he had been born with this rhythm in his bones. Midway through the first verse, the camera panned across the audience, and people were already standing. The judges' table looked like it was caught in a storm of disbelief. Heidi couldn't stop laughing in shock. Sophia kept looking around at the others, as if asking, "Are you hearing this too?" Simon was leaning so far forward he looked ready to climb onto the stage. And the contestant? He kept singing, unfazed by the chaos he had already created. As he transitioned into the chorus, he unleashed a stronger, fuller resonance that sent chills racing through the arena. His voice climbed effortlessly, loaded with emotion, control, and charisma. The lights around him shifted from gold to soft blue, bathing the stage in a dreamy glow. He closed his eyes and delivered a powerful run that seemed impossible for someone so young, so humble, so unexpected. Someone in the audience screamed, "That's Elvis!" and the entire place erupted in cheers. But he wasn't just doing Elvis. He was Chan, elling Elvis through his own heart, giving every lyric a fresh, emotional weight. It didn't matter if people had heard the song a million times. This version felt new, electrifying, and alive. The passion in his voice carried the story of the song, but also the story of himself. Every note sounded like it had been lived, felt, loved, and fought for. He moved across the stage slowly, confidently, his voice filling every inch of the auditorium. The musicians behind him exchanged wide-eyed looks, knowing they were backing something extraordinary. Even the camera operators felt it. They zoomed tighter, steadier, drawn to the energy he radiated. As he neared the final buildup of the second chorus, the tension in the room grew thick. His voice rose, stronger, more powerful, as if tapping into a reservoir of emotion that had been waiting for this exact moment. The audience began clapping in rhythm, building energy with him. People shouted encouragement. Some even wiped tears from their eyes, overwhelmed by the mix of nostalgia and raw talent. Then came the moment. He hit a high note so clean, so impossibly pure, that it shot through the arena like a burst of lightning. The crowd exploded. People jumped to their feet. The judges slammed their hands on the table in disbelief. Simon actually laughed, one of those stunned, he can't believe what he's hearing laughs. The contestant held that final note with a level of control that seemed unreal. His eyes open now, burning with emotion, he poured everything into the finish. The lights flared. The audience roared louder than the band. The entire theater shook with applause, screams, and pure adrenaline. When he finally let the note fade, he stood there, chest rising, eyes glistening, looking both exhilarated and overwhelmed. He had walked in as a shy Filipino kid, but now he was a phenomenon. The final note was still hanging in the air when the audience erupted, an explosion of sound so powerful it felt like the entire building shook. People leaped from their seats, screaming, clapping, cheering like they were at a full stadium concert instead of a talent show audition. The cameras vibrated, trying to capture every angle of the madness. It wasn't applause. It wasn't even excitement. It was chaos, the good kind. The kind that only happens when something once in a generation bursts into reality right in front of everyone's eyes. The young Filipino contestant stood frozen at first, his chest rising and falling as he tried to catch his breath. For a moment he looked almost confused, like he didn't fully understand what he had just done to this audience, to this stage, to this show. His hands trembled around the microphone, still lifted near his lips. And then he slowly lowered it, staring out at a sea of people who were losing their minds because of him. The judges were the first ones to move. Sophia jumped to her feet so fast her chair nearly toppled backward. She was shouting something in Spanish, pointing at the contestant as if she couldn't believe he was real. Heidi was clapping with both hands above her head, spinning toward the crowd to hype them up even more. Howie had both palms pressed flat on the table, eyes wide like he'd just witnessed a miracle unfold a few feet in front of him. And Simon was just sitting there, stunned, a grin slowly stretching across his face. The man who had seen it all, heard it all, judged it all, was completely thrown off. His eyebrows lifted, his eyes sparkled, and he began shaking his head, laughing, not at the contestant, but at the pure impossibility of what he had just heard. Then Simon stood, and the crowd screamed even louder. The contestant's breath hitched. He couldn't move. Confetti wasn't falling, yet, but the energy already felt like a golden buzzer moment waiting to explode. People in the audience were chanting now, rhythmic and insistent. "Golden buzzer, golden buzzer, golden buzzer!" The chant grew, pulsing through the theater like a heartbeat. The contestant swallowed hard, his eyes shining. He didn't dare to hope, but hope was already blooming inside him despite himself. Suddenly, Heidi spun toward the judge's table and smacked Sophia's arm. Sophia gasped, looked at her, then at the contestant, then back at the glowing button in front of her. Her hands flew to her mouth as the audience screamed her name. Howie leaned forward, urging the moment on, his grin stretching ear to ear. Simon chuckled, knowing exactly what was about to happen, but not stopping it. The contestant took one shaky step forward, and that's when it happened. Sophia slammed the golden buzzer with both hands. Instantly, the stage exploded in a blinding shower of gold. Confetti shot from above like a storm of shining stars. The lights flared so brightly they washed the entire platform in warm yellow brilliance. The audience roared, an unstoppable, full-body cheer that echoed off the walls. People jumped, hugged, danced in their seats, overwhelmed by the magic of the moment. The contestant's face crumbled. His mouth fell open, his eyes widening. Tears forming instantly. He looked up as gold rained down on him, covering his hair, his jacket, his hands. He reached out, letting the shimmering pieces fall onto his palms, disbelieving, emotional, overwhelmed by the dream that was suddenly, finally, unbelievably real. Sophia rushed onto the stage first, practically running toward him. She wrapped him in a huge motherly hug as she shouted over the confetti storm, "You are unbelievable! Unbelievable!" Heidi followed, arms open, laughing, crying, brushing confetti from his shoulders. Howie clapped him on the back, telling him he just made history. But it was Simon who walked up last, slowly, deliberately, with a smile that carried both pride and awe. When he reached the young singer, he placed a hand on his shoulder and said something the microphones barely caught, but the entire world felt this wasn't an audition. This was a resurrection of a legend. The contestant burst into tears. The judges pulled him into a group hug, gold swirling around them like a scene from a movie. The music swelled, the crowd kept screaming, and the theater lights danced across the stage in waves of gold and white. He had come in as a shy Filipino Elvis fan. He was leaving the stage as the newest golden buzzer phenomenon, one the world would talk about for years. And as the confetti fell, as the judges celebrated, as the audience chanted his name, one truth became clearer than ever. He didn't just perform on that stage, he owned it.